here's Brody Brazil.
You know, looking back across the last month or so, it really felt like there was only one question about Klay Thompson. And that was, where would he end up outside of the Golden State Warriors once NBA free agency opened up? Because it sure felt like staying with his one and only team was no longer a possibility, an option. It seemed unlikely. It felt like that ship had already sailed. And we didn't yet know where he would end up. Now we do know it's the Dallas Mavericks. And although that news came out and was official yesterday, it's given me some time to reflect and now react with a little bit more and better perspective of the bigger picture here. And I'm titling this The End of an Era. I think that's obvious. I think that's where this video needs to begin. It is the end of a certain Warriors era. Yeah, you still have Steph. Yeah, you still have Draymond. But that trio, including Klay Thompson, of all drafted and homegrown players, it was very clear that was the backbone of this franchise. And yeah, Kevin Durant comes and goes. Andre Iguodala comes and goes. Others come and go. But that three were the mainstays, and now one of those three is no longer around. And especially the way that Steph and Klay kind of changed basketball a little more than a decade ago. It wasn't really much of a perimeter league until the Splash Brothers became a thing. And yeah, when you also realize that the Splash Brothers have been broken up, it is kind of a big deal. It does feel like the night that Jose Canseco was traded away from the Oakland A's and the Bash Brothers were no longer a thing. I know not everybody is old enough to understand that, but that also happened mid-season one night. And it sure would have been nice if all three of those players would have started and finished their careers with the Golden State Warriors. But at the same token, I truly understand how rare that is for even one superstar to make it start to finish with the same team, let alone three at the same time. So the odds were that something like this would happen. One of the three, two of the three, heck, maybe all three would not start and end their careers with the Warriors. And maybe that still might happen, although it does feel like Steph and Draymond are probably locked in for as long as we can see right now. We could kind of see this trajectory coming with Klay, and that doesn't make it any easier, but I think it prepared everybody for this reality when he started coming off the bench, when the Warriors started using him in a little bit of a different role. Obviously, in recent weeks, when he unfollowed the Warriors on all social platforms, and I don't know if I'm a big fan of people making too big a deal out of that. He's just trying to maintain mental sanity here. Wants to probably just separate himself. I don't know if it's as much of a statement as it is as much of a protection. We've all been there. We have to click away. We have to hide something or mute it or tell it to go away because we just can't see that right now and have our proper mindset all at the same time. So I'm not going to fault Klay for that one bit. I wish people weren't so observant, but they are. There's not much he could have done about that besides just logging off and scrolling past it or doing whatever. But also, I think as reports came out that contract talks were either non-existent or not going well, or Klay wanted a certain something and the Warriors definitely couldn't give it to him. I think everybody had that realization a couple weeks ago that enough time had passed of conversation, of negotiation, and this just was not going to go in a fruitful way. Klay's 34 and a half years old right now, and he wanted this 3-year deal that he's getting. And clearly, the Warriors are just not in that position. 3 years, $50 million of what Dallas gave him. They're not ready to make that type of commitment to a player that, quite honestly, they stuck through for a couple years when he couldn't even play. They were loyal to him, and I'm not saying that Klay is not being loyal in return. He's a free agent, and we'll get more into his decision-making in just a second. But the Warriors just were not in that position to say, hey, we'll take care of you like we used to take care of you. That is the trajectory of an athlete's career. Usually you come in on some entry-level deal, you prove yourself, you way outperform that contract, then the next contract takes care of you, and then you kind of step up that ladder. But eventually you get on the other side of that hill. And now you are still getting taken care of to a certain degree, but hanging around a winning team or a situation you want, you don't get as much money, but you definitely do get to have some of those benefits. And sticking around with the Warriors, if Klay wanted to, it seemed like that was a possibility. It just would have had to have come at a rate that he had been familiar with. It could not have come at the rate he was familiar with in recent years. And thinking about the Dallas Mavericks, I mean, look, they just made the NBA Finals. They've been a playoff team minus the year before this past season. They've been lurking. They've been around. Maybe Klay feels like he's the missing link. Maybe he feels like that team is making the right strides to not only get back to the finals, but maybe to win it next year. And I also think Klay, at 34 and a half years old, was probably still looking back at those 2+ seasons he missed with a knee injury. And he probably feels cheated by losing those 2 years. And that's why he wants to squeak out every last year possible in his playing contract and playing career. And that kind of makes sense. You understand that part of it. Like, why wouldn't you just take 2 years with the Warriors, or even 1 year, just to get you to the next year, and maybe you do 2 or 3 one-year deals? But Klay for sure wants to stretch this out as long as possible. And I'm not speaking for him, but again, I can understand maybe he did feel cheated by losing some time in the past, and now he wants to make every final season he can and every game count. Could he have made it work with the Warriors? I mean, he certainly would have not gotten the dollar amount, but I think the team would have been willing to entertain that. I don't think you say no to Klay Thompson, and I think you also have to understand you're going to use him in a different role. He might be your 6th man off the bench, maybe even 7 or 8 at some points if the team were to get better or younger or improve. But maybe Klay's interests were elsewhere. And if you really think about the dynamic for just a second, who is the number 1 superstar of the Warriors? It's Steph Curry, who also commands a ton of attention, both in his own sphere and also maybe with controversy as well. That's Draymond Green. Those are the 2 Warriors that people talk about the most. And I'm not saying that means something or that translates into something, but attention-wise, those 2 get typically the most. And I'm not here to make this some psychoanalysis of the mindset of Klay Thompson, but maybe at some point you want to kind of get a fresh start. This is all you've known, and it's only the final couple years. And like I said, maybe the best chance of winning is certainly elsewhere. The Warriors aren't in the best title chances by any means. So maybe Klay's interests in terms of possibilities and in terms of the lay of the land and the scenery, maybe he was kind of tired of being number 3, so to speak, if that's the way he viewed himself or he felt people were viewing him. I don't know. And I'm not going to fault him for that either. This is free agency. This is how it works. I think what hurts for Warriors fans among everything else is not only was he a winner with them, and the stats, which we'll get into in just a second, they're monstrous, and the legend of Game 6 Klay, right? There's so much to his story. But he was a charming and unique personality. I love the fact that he took his boat from his house in the North Bay, crossed the bay, and docked right outside Chase Center. He boat commuted to San Francisco. He was also so awkward and lovable in those interview moments, right? He was interviewed by the local news in New York talking about scaffolding? And he talks about how he would avoid the scaffolding that didn't look safe or well constructed. They're like, "Oh, hi, who are you?" "Oh, you're Klay Thompson, NBA player." Anyway, to the point. I mean, he would have those moments on camera that everybody would capture him in and say, "Oh my gosh, this guy's a little goofy," and we love him for it. He felt relatable, and especially recently, especially when he was going through the knee injury, and we saw the shots of him being emotional on the bench, and there's that one time that Steph came over and talked to him, and you could tell, even though they had masks on, that you could tell what the communication was without being able to hear it. Now, I'm gonna divert for just a second because I didn't do a lot of interviews or interactions with Klay Thompson, but I think this was maybe like 12 years ago.
A lot of offense down the stretch, but a couple big rebounds and defensive stops really fueled you guys in the fourth quarter. Did defense win this game?
It did, no question. I mean, they're an explosive team, man. They're one of the best offensive teams in the NBA, and it was great to come out with a dub. I mean, we needed that. We needed that one bad.
Klay, congratulations.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Guys, now back to the studio.
I don't know who looks younger there, Klay Thompson or yours truly. You can tell we both aged just a little bit. All right, going back to Klay's performance, and this is not stuff that you'll find on his resume, but if you watch Klay over the years, this is the stuff that stands out. How about that game where he dropped 60 points on only 11 dribbles in 2016 against the Indiana Pacers, a home game over at Oracle? And there were a lot of games like that where he'd have a ton of points on literally a bit more than a handful of dribbles. He was such a good catch and shoot performer. 37-point third quarter. Another home game against the Sacramento Kings. How about the 41, 35, 30, and 30-point performances in playoff game sixes over the years? And to me, what stands out most, I'll never forget watching that game live as it happened, the 2019 finals, after tearing his ACL against the Raptors in that game. He left the court. Did they carry him off? Did they help him off? Next thing you know, he's got to shoot the free throws. He runs back out the tunnel, jogs back out the tunnel, goes to the line, and shoots those free throws. Unreal, right? That's Klay Thompson right there. And then there's the more traditional stats and accolades. A 42% three-point shooter over the years. The most 3 points made in an NBA game, a regular season game, 14. That's a record, by the way. 4-time NBA champion, 5-time All-Star, 2-time on the NBA third team, 1-time NBA All-Defensive team, and yes, he's also won Olympic gold. I mean, the career speaks for itself. And so the Warriors put out this pretty heartfelt statement, to be honest with you, and I could see right through it that they don't write stuff like this for just anybody. They might have been working on this for a while because it seems so well put together, but I think this statement is a statement. How special and carefully this is worded goes to how they still feel about Klay Thompson. We can't overstate Klay Thompson's incredible and legendary contributions with the Warriors during his 13 years with the team, highlighted by 4 NBA championships, 6 trips to the NBA Finals, 5 NBA All-Star Game appearances, and several NBA records, including the most points ever scored in a quarter in NBA history, 37, and the most three-point field goals in a game, as we just talked about, 14. The amount of joy and happiness that Klay provided Warriors fans, Bay Area natives, and Dub Nation supporters all around the world has been immense and cannot be minimized. His penchant for delivering in pressurized situations on the biggest stage, including many Game 6 heroics, has helped define a career. And this is where it gets good. Klay's legacy will live on forever, and we look forward to the day we can retire his number 11 jersey at Chase Center, where he will join a host of Warriors immortals, including those who helped shape this recent dynasty, himself included. How many teams, the moment a player walks away, and Klay walked away. I mean, it was the sign and trade thing, but Klay walked away from this. How many teams say on departure, by the way, you're leaving us? We're going to retire your jersey someday. We're going to give you the ultimate honor when you're ready for it. It's special, right? It's unbelievable. We thank Klay for his contributions and wish him the best as another chapter in his journey is written. And you know what? Thankfully, that chapter is not going to be written with the Lakers or any other kind of just head-to-head rival type team or situation for the Warriors. I guess it'll be a lot easier to pull for Klay individually, knowing that it's just a few states away, half a continent away. But again, I think we all saw this coming, that Klay would not be sticking around. We did not know it was Dallas. Now that we do, it's starting to sink in. And I think this is going to come in waves for a lot of Warriors fans. We're hearing of this now. We're understanding it over the rest of the summer. But it really won't hit until it's opening night and Klay Thompson is nowhere to be found. And then you'll watch him on the highlights do some incredible things for the Mavs. I certainly hope that's the case. But it is going to be weird seeing him in any different jersey, NBA jersey, than the Warriors, because that's all we've ever known. So I personally wish Klay the best. Like I said before, not even kidding around. If we are looking at those three, the big three of Steph, Klay, and Draymond, I've always kind of gravitated towards Klay. Great player. I mean, you could argue who's the best. I'm not even going to do that. I just think in terms of a fan favorite, somebody I enjoyed watching, somebody who felt the emotion, somebody who didn't always have to be as polished. Now, like Steph is super polished. Draymond could use a little more polish on occasion. And Klay was kind of right there in the middle. Sometimes he was, sometimes he wasn't. But lovable, likable, the family lineage, you obviously know, where he came from. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Easy guy to root for. I wish it was with the Warriors. I wish he got to go start to finish, but it's obviously not going to happen. So, hey, you made it here to the end of this video. I really appreciate that. Thumbs up down below. That'll greatly help me, this video, and this channel. And by the way, I'd love to see you back here next time. If this is your first time seeing me and catching this channel, I'm glad you found me. But let's do it again. Go down there right now while you're here, while this video is still playing. Hit that subscribe button so I can definitely see you back here next time.